Valve just gave us some awesome new info on the Steam Machine, the Steam Deck 2, and even maybe the Steam Machine Pro. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about Steam hardware. I hope you're having a great weekend playing a ton of video games. The reason I'm saying weekend is because it's Saturday morning. I woke up bright and early. I listened to my friend Jake Baldino's podcast where he got to interview Valve just like he did back when the Steam Deck OLED came out. And there was a ton of good info in this interview, so I highly recommend listening to the whole thing. I really liked it because Lawrence was joined by Pierre this time, so you got kind of both sides of the coin in terms of the forward-facing friendly guy with Lawrence. There is a ton of new info in this interview. I picked out just a few things that really stood out to me, so I highly encourage you to go listen to it, because how often does Valve do video interviews? Almost never. So I'll link it down in the description. Please go check it out. But real quick, before I jump into it, I gotta level with you guys. I would love to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I have had the best month of subscribers I've ever had, so I'm very grateful for that. But 100K would make my year. Please subscribe, set your notifications to all. I work hard to make good content here on this channel. You won't regret it. The first thing I want to cover is the price. We don't know what the price is. Everyone's interested in the price. You knew this was going to come up in the interview. I kind of just want to get it out of the way though, because I'm more interested in what the machine can do. So I'm going to roll the clip.
I think that if you build a PC from parts and get to basically the same level of performance, that's the general price window that we aim to be at. Okay. Ideally, we'd be pretty competitive with that and have a pretty good deal, but we're working on refining that as we speak. And right now is just a hard time to have a really good idea of what the price is going to be, because there's a lot of different things that are fluctuating.
Yeah, a lot of external things there.
Yeah.
So yeah, at first it seems like they're kind of just reiterating what we've already heard and read in other interviews and heard secondhand from people like Linus. But if you listen closely, they're kind of refuting a few different things and kind of confirming some good news when it comes to the Steam Deck price. So specifically the line about adding up the parts and that being the cost that they're going for, that could put you anywhere on the map. Like there are laptops that have better components than the Steam Machine that cost less than $500. There are laptops with worse parts than the Steam Machine that cost $600 or $700, and when you get into the mini PC world, they go anywhere from $500 to $1,000 depending on the brand and what specific parts are inside of them. They heavily allude to the fact that the reason they're waiting on price is because they're very conscious. They say specifically they want to be competitive. There's a whole situation going on right now with RAM and memory costs going up because there's a shortage, but the memory makers like Samsung aren't committing to making new factories because they're not sure if the AI demand for all this memory is just a bubble that's going to pop. They don't want to just stockpile a bunch of memory and then have the bubble burst and then they'll be stuck with a lot of memory and then they'll have to lower prices, which will reduce how much money they make. It'll just be a huge disaster. So they're shortening the amount that makes it to stores and they're diverting it over to AI data centers because those companies are who are going to pay the big bucks for all this memory. I know there's a big subsect of people out there who are absolutely convinced. They are adamant that this thing is going to be minimum $800 for the 512 gig version and then go up to over $1,000 for the 2 terabyte version. But two of the people I trust the most in this space that I talk to regularly are the Fox and Moore's Law is Dead, and they are both laser pointed on it being between $450 and $500. I'm assuming they're talking about the 512 gig version. They haven't really specified, but you know, when you're talking about the absolute price, you're usually going for the lowest price, right? Like everyone says the Steam Deck is $399 because the cheapest version is. They don't talk about the $649 1 terabyte OLED. And my buddy Ralph, who runs SkillUp, did ask if they're going to subsidize it. They said no, they're not going to subsidize it. They want to get to the level that it costs to add up the parts. But the way they were talking about it, at least the way I heard it, is that they're really just trying to break even, right? Like they want to get into a price competitive point that basically equals out to adding up all the parts. So like if you went to Micro Center and bought the exact components or as close as you could get to it that are going to be in the Steam Machine, that's the price they want to charge you for this. They don't want to add markup like, you know, if you bought it from Asus or Lenovo or someone else, because they've got to make a profit, but Valve doesn't really have to. They at least have to break even, because if they're losing money on it, yes, they'll make it back from Steam, but you don't want to really lose money if you don't have to, and I don't think they have to because the other manufacturers are charging such a premium on these small form factor PCs. Overall, it was a super encouraging response, and I really like that they pointed out all the extra features that you're getting with this thing that aren't done in the PC space.
But also some integration features like HDMI CEC, right? Like being able to turn on your TV, turn off your TV, change the control it with your TV remote, change the volume, all that kind of stuff. Like the Bluetooth and wireless work that we've done, the 4 antennas, the like very deliberate design to make sure that you can have a great experience with 4 Bluetooth controllers from any manufacturer, plus our Steam controller receiver integrated as well. Like that's all hard to do, but more importantly, you can turn on the machine from your controller, right? Which is not something that's actually straightforward depending on the type of PC you have or the mainboard chipset and all that. So like being able to sit down on your couch, press one button on your controller, and the whole thing lights up like you'd expect for a thing that's in your living room, I think that's very valuable. And there's not really a price point to that because it's not really something that exists in the PC market right now.
That's like a level of work that brings this thing closer to a console that literally no other PC that you can buy or build right now is going to be able to achieve. Speaking of the controller turning it on, I mean, that's a huge thing as well. You can set it up on PCs. The Fox, I just mentioned him, he's done it before on Windows, and I think it kind of works on Bazzite. Like 1 out of 5 times, if I hit the PlayStation button on my DualSense, it'll turn on, but it's not reliable and it's not instant. It takes a couple seconds for the PC to spin up. The way SteamOS works with its sleep mode basically means that, because this thing has an SSD, when it goes into sleep mode, when you hit the button on the Steam controller, it's going to wake right up just like a console. And that didn't just materialize, right? Like they had to put work in to make that happen. And it is a feature that's unique to this device. So if you're one of those people who's like, I don't know who this is for, I don't know why anyone would want this because the hardware is inferior, there is extra features being built in that add ease of use and convenience. And Lawrence even hit on that. He was like, when I was in college, I loved building PCs. I enjoyed doing it. Now that I'm older and I have less time and less drive to do it, having a box that's already built that comes with all the features I want to use from a convenience standpoint, that's what we're trying to provide. And that's what I've been saying. That's what I want. I like building PCs. I'm just kind of over it now that I'm 32, right? Like I've done it 4 or 5 times. I would be fine to never build another PC again. Like if I can get this Steam machine and it's going to give me decent performance and I won't have to worry about, changing components beyond the SSD if I want to upgrade it or anything like that, that's fine with me. For this next section, I mean, huge shout out to Ralph for asking them straight up about a Steam Machine Pro. I thought they'd give a straight no, but like just watch the clip.
Yeah. Would Valve at all be interested in a Steam Machine Pro? Because obviously you've got this unit which is hitting at that mid-level. Is that the kind of thing that might fit into the category in the future, do you think?
Potentially, yeah. I think we're open to anything. For now, we're focusing on this level of spec because we think it's a good trade-off between affordability and the level of power we get. I think we're excited that the level of performance kind of gets you to the point where the whole library is pretty much good to go, and you don't really have to worry about a game that's going to come out or not. There's always some settings you can find that are going to get to a pretty good experience. So we're trying to find that sweet spot, right? But I think there's a variety of different spec levels in the PC market. There's a bunch of stuff that you can do to get super crisp like 4K native output, or even going beyond that, very high refresh rates. There's the PC ecosystem is too big to be able to pin down and say, okay, this is it, this is PC, right? And so we're actually super excited to see what people do from their own parts or working with third parties as well.
Hearing them mention a Steam Machine Pro, obviously very surprising to me. I thought they would just give a flat no like they did to other questions, like, is this thing going to ship with Half-Life 3? And the big reason for that is, back when the Steam Deck and Steam Deck OLED came out, they were asked multiple times in multiple interviews if they would ever do a Steam Deck Pro. And they're like, no, we want to get into this 15-watt TDP space with the Steam Deck. We're really happy with where we landed with battery life and screen, especially with the OLED. We're just going to worry about as it is for now and then wait until technology lets us do this again, but with better hardware. So like, it's a totally different philosophy to hear them just say, yeah, we would do a Steam Machine Pro. Of course, it'll cost more, but if a lot of these features that I was just talking about, like being able to turn it on with the controller, the multiple Bluetooth radios, the direct connection to Steam Frame, if that is something that people mass adopt and really want from a better PC, I mean, that gives Valve a really good reason to just build a better piece of PC hardware. I think their philosophy for launching it of just going for the mid-range where everyone is sitting, like 70% of people on Steam, is smart, but I like the way they're talking about this because it shows that this is not going to be a one and done device, just like with the Steam Deck. I'm really glad that they're in it for the long haul with Steam hardware. Going back to not wanting to build PCs anymore, hi, I am the direct market. I am the consumer that you need to cater to when it comes to making a Steam Machine Pro. I don't give a shit what it costs. I will buy it day one, mainly for the convenience factor factor and form factor alone, I don't think they'd be able to hit this absolutely tiny Kleenex size form factor that they're hitting with the Steam Machine if they went for a little bit more power even. But even if it was just a little bit bigger, I'd be fine with putting that under my TV. As long as it's not like a full-sized ATX case or whatever, I don't even know the terminology, I think we're fine, right? Like as long as it's the size of a console like an Xbox Series X or a PS5 Pro, I think we're in the ballpark of safe to put under your TV without your wife throwing it through the glass window that you'll then have to figure out how to replace a window on YouTube to replace. And going back to the Steam Deck Pro idea, I just realized a huge reason they probably never did it is because of the form factor itself. You would need to put a bigger battery in if you put a more powerful chip in right now, and they clearly don't want to do that because it would increase the footprint of the Steam Deck. And I think that's smart because I have experience with every handheld, right? Like I had an ROG Ally original version, I got the X upgrade, I got the ROG Xbox Ally X, and I have a Legion Go S. The Legion Go S is the closest to the Steam Deck in terms of form factor and ergonomics, and all of these devices have higher resolution screens, better processors, some of them have more RAM, but I always go back to the Steam Deck because, you know, if I use those other devices, I lose the OLED screen, I lose the trackpads, and I lose out on a device that I can play laying on my back in bed. So if they had to skimp on that to make a Steam Deck Pro, it's probably not worth it, which is why they never did it. But when it's a device you're plugging into your TV, you know, there is room for a Steam Machine Pro, and I really hope this thing does well so they eventually make it. But one issue they really need to solve is anti-cheat, and this was my favorite part of the interview because I told Jake beforehand to ask this question specifically, so I'm really glad he did. Thank you, Jake.
It's been definitely something we think about, and there is more reasons to think about it in that environment, like you're pointing out, right? Because there's more reasons that someone would want to play an online game that requires anti-cheat if they have a machine like that compared to something like the Steam Deck. But at the end of the day, I think supporting anti-cheat and is kind of a constant effort, right? Like you have the system, the infrastructure, and you're always rolling out updates. There's a lot of like active things you're doing, and I think some of that work by nature, because it's so close to the platform, will have to be SteamOS specific, right? And there's some things that are on our plate as well, for sure, that we've been working on in the background that will make that easier on their side as well.
So overall, at first, the answer is exactly what you'd expect, right? Like they put the ball in the publisher's court, which is totally fair because it's on the publishers 99% to make this happen. But they did point out that they've been working on tools to make it as easy as possible to get like easy anti-cheat or whatever working on the Steam Deck. And they have a good point that, the Steam Deck is not necessarily made for multiplayer. It's a portable device and you're probably going to use it not connected to the internet at some point. The Steam Machine theoretically will always be connected to the internet. And since you're going to be able to put it on your desk and use it with the keyboard and mouse, you're going to want to be able to use multiplayer games, which means use anti-cheat. But if you've watched the channel at all over the past year or so, you've definitely heard me talk about how I think Valve needs to take a page out of Sony's book, where like Sony will send developers over to developers who are working on games for the PlayStation 5 and help them implement DualSense features. I don't think Valve needs to go that far, but they should at least be in talks with these publishers to let them know that they are working to make it easier to support this stuff. And they say it's on their plate and they have some stuff on the back end that they really want to work on. So I think that basically is a hint that they're working hard to make it happen, and it probably will, because they wouldn't say it if they weren't feeling positive about where things are heading. They could say, it's on the publishers. Well, we hope they'll figure it out, but nothing as of now. The fact that they specifically pointed out that they have things on their plate that they're working on in this regard is great. And I think the most important detail to point out is that they're very clear that like software like Javelin, the Battlefield 6 anti-cheat that EA developed for that game, it would need a SteamOS specific version. Like it can't be like easy anti-cheat where it barely gets updated and you just throw the anti-cheat file in the folder to make sure it's the version Steam Deck can interface with and everything works fine. Since Javelin is kernel level, requires secure boot, those are hurdles that they'd have to figure out. So I think what they were hinting on is the fact that they're working on some way to make it easier for EA to port it over without spending time or money on it, which, is the easiest way to get these corporations to do what you want. So I don't think it's going to be immediately solved at launch, but we're heading in the right direction because we're still a few months out and they're clearly thinking about it. And the best thing is this will trickle down to the Steam Deck because it's all running SteamOS. So overall, positive development when it comes to anti-cheat. Next up, we get to give ourselves a pat on the back because they basically said we're the reason that the Steam Machine exists. So I'm going to roll the clip.
I mean, as you can imagine, the idea wasn't really groundbreaking. So everyone understood that it's something we could do even before Deck. But I think after shipping deck and seeing a year or two go by and watching all the catalog become like closer to deck verified, and seeing a bunch of these tweaks to have default graphical settings, seeing the great experience that people are having with it, I think it really proved to us that okay, actually, we should be able to pull this off now.
I think it's awesome that he pointed out that, like everyone knew they could do this. Anyone could build a small form factor PC and add some extra parts. But I think it's even cooler that they said the reason they did it is because of our reaction to the Steam Deck. Like 2 years in, they started seeing more Steam Deck verification, more Steam Deck graphics presets. They saw demand from the audience and publishers and developers willing to meet that demand. So that let them know that, hey, they finally did it, right? Because with the original Steam machines, they were basically asking developers to port their games natively to Linux. They made it as easy as they could, but they realized it was just too much work. Now it's dead simple and it's really paying off. So because we put so much effort into letting publishers and developers know that we want to play their games on Steam Deck, and that resulted in Steam Deck graphics presets and verification working out for so many games, that's what gave Valve the little extra push they needed to make the Steam machine in the first place. So everyone watching this channel, and myself, I will add, get to pat ourselves on the back for, being the reason the Steam machine exists. Doesn't that feel pretty cool? I feel pretty cool. They also talked about the Steam Deck dock, and this one was surprising to me.
And also seeing, we shipped the Steam Deck dock around the same time, and we saw basically 20% of people who bought a Steam Deck also have a dock. And that doesn't even include the people who got a third-party dock. So there are a lot of people who are actually playing Steam Decks docked to a TV, which is kind of what led to Steam Controller, because they're like, oh, this kind of sucks. I want to play my Steam games but I don't have all the inputs that I'm used to for my Steam Deck. And so that kind of led to Steam Controller. And they're like, oh, I'm playing all my Steam games in my living room. Be cool if this had a little more power to it.
Working back from an existing audience of users that are using the thing, the experience in the way that we're proposing to improve, and are giving us immediate feedback on what works and what doesn't work, is really our preferred way to go about it. So we're not trying to build something that because we think it's a good idea. We want to make sure that users are into it. And so for us, having those deck users that were docked, that were telling us things about the level of performance they're getting, but also having to leave their controller behind when they're docking the deck, right, and having to use a third-party controller. All of that gave us a really crisp direction on the things to improve on for that experience.
So 20% of Steam Deck owners are using the official Steam Deck dock, and that doesn't cover third-party docks. So I'd imagine it's a lot more than 20%, because JSOX was immediately on their A game with the docked experience with the Steam Deck. They got their docks out for a lot cheaper than Valve's, well before Valve did. So yeah, I've talked about how I haven't really been using my Steam Deck docked, but since you guys told me it's awesome, I've been using it more, and I actually use it now as my main work PC. For editing, I use my MacBook, but when I'm writing videos, watching YouTube, or just doing general PC things, I've been using my Steam Deck dock, and I'm blown away at how well it's able to run. Like, I can write a video with a YouTube video running and a game downloading in the background, and it does not slow down at all. If I run too many tabs at the same time, I do experience a little slowdown, but I don't really do that, so it's not really an issue. So yeah, I'm sure that influenced them in making the Steam machine, because they pointed out that people are using the Steam Deck docked and have been asking them for more power because they like the SteamOS experience on the TV. So they're just kind of giving us specifically what we've been asking for. And the last thing I want to touch on is they were directly asked about the Steam Deck 2, and there's not really anything new here, so I'll just roll the clip.
We want to have a big performance leap at the same battery life that we have right now. And the technology for that, simply put, just does not exist today. I think architectures are getting better and processes are getting better, but the kind of off-the-shelf, chips that you see being used for various handhelds and other devices right now are directly taken from kind of laptop roadmap chips, right? They're not customized for handheld, so they're targeting power envelopes that are more like 30 to 35 watt peak, right? As opposed to the Steam Deck custom silicon that is kind of a 7 to 12 to 15, maybe if you're being generous, watt power envelope. But more importantly, it's designed to run efficiently at those levels, as opposed to targeting a little bit higher level of performance. And so we're trying to make sure that we stay there and we don't compromise on portability and battery life, because everyone that is using Steam Deck is telling us that's really important to them.
Yeah.
It was great to hear it pointed out that, a lot of people are saying that the tech does exist for a Steam Deck 2 because we have the ROG Xbox Ally, we have the Legion Go 2. Those are more powerful devices with bigger, higher resolution screens, but there's a little bit of trickery going on because all of those settle in at the 25 to 30 watt range, whereas the Steam Deck caps out at half of that at 15 watts, and it's really in its sweet spot at 12 watts. It's still crazy that it can run at that low of a power set. So when it comes to the Steam Deck 2, they want to do that again, right? So you need the tech to far outpace what the Steam Deck 2 wants to do, so you can kind of artificially hold it back and still get good performance. I don't want to say hold it back negatively, but you have to cut the power down to the absolute lowest it can go so you get good battery life. And if you want to know what battery life they're going for, Pierre specifically said they're happy with where the battery life is with the Steam Deck OLED. So 2 hours with a heavy game and 3 or 4 with a lighter game, or even up to 6 with an indie game. Hopefully it pays off with a device that we don't lose any features from the Steam Deck and only get added ones, because when you're not working on a yearly release cycle, that's what that provides. So I think they have their thinking right there, and the Steam Machine makes it okay to wait a little bit longer for the Steam Deck, because at the very least you can use that built-in radio to stream directly to your deck. I know I'm biased because Jake is one of my close friends, but I think this interview was great. I loved the Steam Deck OLED one a couple years ago, and I think they leveled up their interview game since then, because Jake specifically was on point with the questions. Not just the one that I fed him to ask. I'm going to take credit for the anti-cheat question, but everything else he asked was great. They cover the process behind making the trailer and everything like that, in addition to some other stuff. So please go check out the full interview in the description. I'm working through Half-Life 2 on the Steam Deck. If you haven't played it since they did the 20th anniversary update, it feels like a deck native game now. It's amazing. It runs at 90 FPS, absolutely locked. So there's a recommendation for you guys. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.